Hi, I'm going to let it load for a second. All right. So we have been talking in math. We've been using number lines and we've been doing jumps of 1, 5, and 10 to get to different numbers. We've talked a little bit about splitting as an addition and subtraction strategy. And today we are going to look back at number lines to use it in a different way. So here we go. We're going to just practice together today. You're not going to go off and do anything by yourself. You will need a piece of paper and a pencil. So when I say you're not going to go off and do anything by yourself, you're not going to have something to do after the lesson. We're going to do it all together today because it's the first day we're doing it. And I don't want you to go, ah! So here we go. I can solve story problems. Today we're going to use a number line to do some adding and subtracting large numbers. So I have my whiteboard. Now I know that when I write on my whiteboard and use my little camera in the side, sometimes it can be reversed. So I need you to look at my board, but I also need you to think about what you know about numbers and also what the number line on the screen looks like, so that you can make your number line on your paper look correct. I hope that makes sense. All right. So we can't turn and talk because we're home, but I want you to think in your head. I want you to think about how old the people are in your family. So I'm just going to jot that down on my board. The people who you live with in your house, maybe your grandparents, but think of like 5 people who you know the ages of. Okay. So all right, I wrote 4. Okay, so I wrote the age of my youngest son, 1. My other son is 3. My husband is 32. And then I wrote the age of my mom. My mom is 70. All right. So if we want to put your teacher's 90-year-old grandma on a number line, so here's a number line that starts at 0. I want you to think about where that number 90 would go. Okay, so we have 0. I'm going to do a shrunken version of the same number line. So I'm going to write a 0. And I'm thinking, where's that number 90 going to go? That 90-year-old grandma. Is she going to go right here? What do you know about 90? It's not super close to 0, is it? So if I were going to put 90, it would be pretty far on my number line. Probably be almost to the end of this one. What about Charlie, my son, who just turned 1? Where would his number go on the number line of 1? Pretty close to the 0, right? Because it's the next number. So let's take a second. I'm going to add where I think 90 would go. And I want you to maybe do that on yours too. So remember, 90 is going to go pretty close on the other side because it's far. So I added 90, but I also added 100 just to kind of see that in my head. And then I'm going to add where maybe Charlie would go. And that's him. I added 1. Okay, so I just want you to think about how numbers would go on a number line and how close and how far numbers are, because that's important when we're going to answer some of the next questions. All right. So first off, I'm going to make my little thing a little smaller so I don't take up too much room. But here's a number line down here, and I want you to just think about what are the numbers going up by on this number line, because sometimes numbers on a number line don't go up by the same thing, just like numbers on a graph. What do the numbers go up by? I see that it starts at 0, and then it's 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. I notice that it's going up by 5s. Now, this is our data over here, and I want you to count and figure out how many people are in this family. So these are ages of all different people in a family: Carlos and Anna, Nicholas, Maria, Uncle Leo, Aunt Elsa, Mom, Dad, Grandpa, Grandma. How old are they? Or how many people are in the family? Look at all those people. On the count of 3, show me on your hands how many people you counted. I counted 10. Did you count 10? Carlos, Anna, Nicholas, Maria, Uncle Leo, Aunt Elsa, Mom, Dad, Grandpa, Grandma. 10. All right, so now we're going to look and at the end of the person's name, there's a number, and that's how old the person is. So I want you to look at all those numbers that are at the end of the person's name, and I want you to see who's the oldest person. Who's the oldest person on this number line or in their family? Put your finger on your nose when you have the answer. The oldest person. I see that it's Grandma. I see that Grandma is 80. So I'm just going to write that real quick. Okay. Now I want you to look and figure out who is the youngest person in the family and how old is he? Who's the youngest? All right. So I see that Carlos is 6, and so he's the youngest. So then you can answer all sorts of things about it, like who is older, Nicholas or Maria? So I'm going to find Nicholas. Okay. Maria. Okay. So I see that Maria is older, but you could use a number line to figure out how much older. So let's keep going. This is where you need a piece of paper. You want a fresh piece of paper. When you're drawing your line on your number line, I want you to use lined paper. So use a notebook that has blue lines on it. And I want you to make sure that your number line is real straight on that blue line. That will make it look nicer and neater, and it will help you. Okay, so here we go. We're going to do this. Anna is older than Carlos. How much older? Use labeled sketches and numbers to show your answers on your whiteboard. So here is the number line. I'm going to make my number line look just like that. I don't need to write their whole name. So here's my number line. I'm going to start with Carlos, and I'm going to write the number 6. And underneath the 6, I'm just going to put a C for Carlos, just like this. All right, then I'm going to add the other people. I'm going to pay attention to where they put their numbers. So if they put 15 and 9 kind of far from one another, I'm going to do that on my board too. I'm not going to put them right close together because I know that 15 doesn't come right after 9. Okay. So I'm going to take time. I'm going to look at what I have and compare. I'm going to use the first letter in everyone's name. So I just did Anna. I wrote a 9. I wrote an A for Anna. All right, I'm writing 15. I'm writing an N for Nicholas. And I just did 20 and an M for Maria. So this is what mine looks like. Okay, so now we're going to use what we know about hops to figure out how much older certain people are. Okay, so I'm going to move my... So it says Nicholas is older than Anna. How much older? Okay, so here's Anna and here's Nicholas. So I'm going to use some jumps. Okay, I'm going to start at 9 and I want to take a jump of 1 to get to 10. And then what do you know about how I can get from 10 to 15 in the fewest jumps? Would I jump by 1s, 5s, or 10s? I'm at 10 and I want to get to 15. How could I figure that out? So far on my board, I have a hop of +1 to get from 9 to 10. And now I want to know how I'm going to get to 10 to 15 in one jump. All right, I know that I need to hop +5 to get to 15. Now I can add the hops that I took, 1 + 5 to figure out how much older Anna is than Nicholas. So I know that Anna is 5 plus 1, 6 years older. All right. Let's see if we can go to the next one. Okay. So now we're going to solve one more. We're going to make our number line look just like this. You guys are doing well. Okay, so these are still the same family. It's just different people. So this time I noticed that our number line starts at 75, where Grandpa's age is. So I'm going to do the same thing. Grandpa's there at 75. I guess I'm just going to do GP, Grandpa. And then Grandma is 80. So I'm going to do 80 and GM for Grandma. And then they have 100. So I want to make mine look just like they make theirs look. Okay. So I have 75 GP, 75 for Grandpa, 80 for Grandma, and then I have 100. So it says, how much older is Grandma than Grandpa? All right. So, how much older is Grandma than Grandpa? You could do it in a few different ways. Maybe you know how far 75 is to 80 and you just do one jump of that number. Maybe you want to do hops of 1 because you just like how it looks in your head. So I'll show you both ways. You could do hops of 1, plus 1, 76, plus 1, 77, plus 1, 78, plus 1, 79, plus 180. Now this is looking a little bit messy because my marker is fat, but I could do 5 hops of 1, and that would tell me that Grandma is 5 years older than Grandpa. Or I could just take one big hop from 75 to 80 of plus 5 to tell me that. All right, it says Grandma always said she wanted to live to be 100 years old. How many more years is that? Okay, so I'm going to erase what I just did. Grandma is 80, and I want to know how many more years is it until she gets to 100, because she wants to live to 100. She's at 80. Okay, so think about our hops of 1, 5, and 10. How many hops of 1, 5, or 10 would it take to get to 100? In the fewest hops possible. You do it on yours, and I'm going to do it on mine. Remember to label your hops and where you land on the number line. All right. Here's what mine looks like. I knew that if Grandma was 80 and she wants to be 100, well, I could take one hop of 10 to get to 90. I labeled my hop plus 10, and I also labeled where I landed on the number line, 90. But I wasn't quite to 100 yet. So I still needed to take a hop, and I could take another hop of plus 10. So I did plus 10, and I landed at 100. So now if I add this up, my 2 hops, I know that 10 plus 10 equals 20. And so Grandma would be 20, or would be 120 years. All right, we are going to stop right there because it's getting a little bit of a long video, but there are 2 more questions. And if you want to, on your time, you can solve those. So using the same number line of Grandpa at 75 and Grandma at 80, and then our 100 over there, I want to know, how old will Grandpa be in 10 years? So he's 75 now. How could you use hops on a number line to show how old Grandpa will be in 10 years? Remember, we like hops of 1, 5, or 10. If you can use a hop of 10, use a hop of 10. If you can't, use a hop of 5. If you can't use a hop of 5, use a hop of 1. And you can always mix them. So maybe you use a hop of 5 and then some hops of 1. But if you don't need to mix them, don't. Only mix them if you have to. All right. And then other question is, how old was Grandma 6 years ago? That sounds tricky. That sounds like you might need to go backwards. So how could you use hops of 5 or 1 to show hops backwards of how old Grandma used to be 6 years ago? Do your best. We will talk about this more. This is just to get your brain started. Okay, number lines can be really useful, just like splitting can be really useful. They're only useful the more that we practice. And so if you're feeling a little frazzled, it's okay. We will keep talking about it. But the more that you practice, the better it will be. So don't just say to yourself, you know what, I don't get it. I'm not going to keep trying. Keep trying. I promise you, the more that you practice, the better it will feel, the better it will be. And it will end up being a strategy that maybe you go to for addition or subtraction, just like splitting, because you always want to be able to prove your answer and show your answer. It's really important. So when we take assessments down the road and it asks for 2 strategies, number line could always be a strategy for solving addition and subtraction problems. All right. Have a great day. Remember to make choice board choices after you watch this video, after you've practiced some of this in your notebook. You have those 4 things to complete by the end of the week. The Star Power game that you can play with family members, the Prodigy assignment, the Study Island assignment, and the story problem packet. So in your story problem packet, you have to show your work. And what better strategies than the splitting strategy that we've talked about this week or number line. All right. Have a good rest of your day.